of diverse religious, spiritual, and secular worldviews to participate in one another's practices in order to cultivate appreciative understanding and to build friendships and relationships, as well as to unify them around common moral, social, and ethical concerns. And this program is co-sponsored by the Greater Kansas City Interfaith Council. I see that Cindy, you're on the line. Did you want to give a introduction to the Interfaith Council?
Sure. So the Interfaith Council in Kansas City involves about 22 faiths, and we meet together monthly. We're kind of in the process of reimagining ourselves and going through some strategic planning. And Susan Nikau is one of our great members, so I just look forward to hearing from her tonight.
Thanks so much, Cindy. And Cindy is the current chair. So I'm really happy to have Susan with us. This series in particular was designed to create a space to learn about other faith traditions in order to dispel misinformation and hopefully eradicate some of the xenophobia that can lead to violence towards people from different traditions. So we're really happy to have Susan with us here tonight. And I'm gonna go ahead and read Susan's bio. More than 4 decades ago in 1979, after completing her PhD in art education, Susan Nikau moved to Northern Kentucky to take a position as an assistant professor. As a first-year university teacher, she was assigned a mentor who introduced her to Sukyo Mahikari within her first month at university. She had a fairly strong background in the Methodist Church as a young person, but her university studies had placed an emphasis on scientific research over religion or spirituality. Thus, she was extremely skeptical about this organization and the spiritual practice of the art of true light, which it teaches. As a brand new and somewhat arrogant PhD student, she felt that her skepticism was an asset in many ways. From the first time she received true light, she could feel the spiritual energy flowing strongly into her body, but her skepticism was strong and she tried to understand how the giver of the true life was doing this to her. It seemed straightforward, but it was very hard for her to trust this process, and she wondered if she was being tricked or fooled in some way. She decided to apply for the 3-day seminar and learn the practice, which with a plan to set up experiments and observe the results for herself. Over the first 3 years as a member, she conducted several experiments using various foods, plants, and people, and always having a control that did not receive light. Through these experiments and through her own spiritual experiences over those early years, her eyes were opened in a concrete way to the true existence of a spiritual realm beyond the physical and mental realms. As she studied the divine teachings and embraced the daily practice of giving true light, she grew in her desire to deeply understand the spiritual realm and how it interacts with the physical and mental aspects of life that she had embraced until discovering this vertical path. Her faith and commitment to the practice of Sukyo, the universal or divine principles, and Mahikari, the art of true light, grew step by step, and today, 41 years later, she would like to share a little bit about Sukyo Mahikari and about her journey, hand in hand with Sugod, the Holy Masters, and more than 1 million other Sukyo Mahikari members in more than 110 countries, as they all work to realize a civilization of harmony based upon love, here on Earth through the principle of the 3-dimension cross, which unites God, humans, and nature, as well as God, ancestors, and descendants. So, Susan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here and for letting me study together with you so I can learn more about my own practice. How many of you had heard of Sukyo Mahikari before tonight? Okay, I know Cindy had because and Katya's here, she's a member. Okay, good. So I'm going to just go through this slide presentation. As the introduction mentioned, I was a university professor. I taught art, and I'm really comfortable with slide presentations. So I hope it doesn't bore you. And tonight I just called this the light of hope, the light of love, the light illuminating a path forward. So here we go. What in the world's going on? I guess I should have had on here not only pandemics and global warming, but maybe I should have had polar freezing for this last week. So many things are happening in the world right now, and many of us attribute most of it to global warming. We don't really have an idea of what's going on in most cases, I think, and it's worrisome, especially for the younger people. So first of all, I want to explain Sukyo Mahikari comes from Japan, and Sukyo Mahikari should be written in Japanese characters up there, but I never learned the Japanese characters. But the Su means universal or core or main, and Kyo means teachings, Ma means true, and Hikari means light. So this is basically a dual, it's a singular path with two aspects. We have an esoteric aspect, an esoteric in this sense that it's through experience. We have this spiritual art of true light, which through our experiences, as she said, I did many experiments in the beginning, giving light to sterilized jars with strawberries in them, or giving light to seeds to see what if they would grow at the same rate when they received light or didn't. So it's through our own experiences. I had many experiences also with the art of true light as I received and as I gave to others. So that's the esoteric aspect of this path. And then we have exoteric, which has to do with the study of teachings. And I'll talk more about that. But the main point of Sukyo Mahikari is that we understand that from the beginning, the I am, the origin, the God that we call Su, the core, the main, okay? From the very beginning, there was a plan. And we'll talk more about that plan as we proceed. This is a diagram that the founder received in Revelations to show us the different stages in the plan. So first I want to talk about the sacred esoteric art of true light. Okay, in all of our centers, you're going to find this statement. And it's covered for me, so I can't see it right now. But anyway, the art of the true light, I don't know what it says at the first 2 or 3 words, but anyway, of the art of true light, the purpose of the art of true light is not to heal illnesses, but to enable all humankind to participate in the great divine work of achieving the divine plan, and at the same time to advance the path to attain a divine nature through the purification of the Trinity of the spirit, mind, and body, and thus resurrect the original power as children of God. So most people who see us practicing the art of true light, where we raise up our hand and we give light first about 10 minutes to the main soul, and then on the back of the head and neck, medulla oblongata and cerebral vertebral area, and then we give to people's kidney area, and then we give to extra points. And we ask people, do you have any problem? Is there any health problem or any kind of problem that you're going through that you'd like to receive light for? So in the Western world, this becomes confusing. People think, oh, it's Reiki, right? Or, oh, do you know Reiki? I think some of you know Reiki, okay? So some other kind of spiritual healing practice, okay? But actually, our founder said the healing is the souvenir of the trip, that the purpose is to purify the spiritual aspect, to eliminate our cloudiness. In Buddhism, we'd call it karma. In Christianity, we'd call it sins. We call it spiritual impurities, and they cloud our souls so that we can't awaken. We can't know God in the way that a child of God should be able to know God. So the purpose of receiving light is actually to purify the spiritual aspect. When that happens, mental and physical conditions start to improve. And we do have many people who have practiced and have miracles through this. But for tonight, I'm mainly going to focus on the exoteric, the teachings of Mahikari. And the reason I'm going to do that is because we're on Zoom. If you were here in my house, I would offer to give all of you true light tonight. Okay. One of the differences, for example, between Reiki and the art of true light is free. It's a gift from God. Many people, when they go to a center, will make a love offering, which is fine. Even when somebody gives them light, they may make a love offering, but that person, as a member of Mahikari, does not keep that offering for themselves. It's not a way to make a living for ourselves. It's a way to be of service to God, to help God's children awaken spiritually. So if we receive an offering, we send it to the center. Okay, but offerings are not required and there's no set amount. Little children will come to the center and they'll offer 10 cents or a quarter. I once had a physician from St. Louis come to our Chicago center and he offered $1,000 and I almost fainted. So it was such a shock for me. So for tonight, we really won't talk much more about the art of true light, but please understand it is a key to our practice. And our understanding is, I'll explain more a little later, that the founder received the opportunity to give this art of true light to all humankind so that we can eliminate our spiritual impurities and awaken to the plan of God and how to achieve it. So going on, from the beginning of time, humans have searched for truth and happiness. If you ask anybody, what do you want to be in life? They'll say, well, I want to be happy, right? And we've taken many different paths. In my case, I took art. My friends took science. People are taking politics. And even within religion, there are many different paths. But ultimately, when we all awaken, we're going to reach a summit of truth. I have a picture of Mount Fuji here on the right, A, because it's very important for Japanese people, but B, because if you ever go there, there are many different faces to Mount Fuji. And you can start at the bottom in many different areas, the western slope, you know, the northern slope. But if you keep climbing long enough, and let me give you a clue, take the bus to the 5th station, climb afterwards. But if you keep climbing long enough, you all arrive at the same summit. And people try to do that on New Year's Day frequently, to be up there for the first sunrise. But in this case, the summit we're trying to reach through the art of true light and Sukyo Mahikari is Satori, enlightenment or awakening to the divine truth that allows us to close the gap between humans' idea and between God's idea. So my experience with interfaith people is they like to read. This book, God's Light and Universal Principles for All Humankind, is a relatively small paperback. I looked online today. If you get a new one, it's about $18, which is about what our organization sells it for. And if you don't mind having a used one, it's $1.99 at Abe Books or something like that. So this is a really good explanation of all the things I can't get to tonight. Okay. But the other explanation that I've been thinking a lot about recently, because I grew up as a Methodist. And as a Methodist, if somebody wants to know about Christianity, we hand them the Bible. Here, read this, or at least the New Testament, right? Here, read this. So recently, we have a book of holy words, and recently I've been studying it again more thoroughly. I read it about 20 times in my first 2 or 3 years as a member. It's got 486 pages, but it's a relatively small book. You can see it in relation to my hand here, right? And this is part of the preface that I read earlier and recently, and I thought, well, that would be good to explain what the holy words are. So as these holy words are revelations ardently given to me, that's the founder, by God, the very source of the divine principles and the divine teachings, which he teaches in the 3-day seminar, they should not be disclosed to the public in a careless manner. However, I have received permission to publish the holy words, those that were permitted to be revealed to the public, and were taught that there were many revelations that he was not allowed to reveal. Those that were permitted to be revealed to the public thus far in book form, hoping that they will become a source of nourishment for souls of all humankind. Each word and phrase of these holy words solves the mysteries of past religions of humankind and contains grave esoteric teachings concerning the future of humankind. It is a part of the great prediction for the holy, and again, I can't see the word because of the way the screen's set up. Anyway, spiritually oriented civilization to come in the 21st century and thereafter. and it is a book of reformation of souls for all present humankind. I ask you to keep this in mind because the crisis of the collapse of the materialistic oriented civilization is imminent. Okay, so the first slide said, what's going on? And he gives us a clue right here. There's a crisis of the collapse of the materialistic oriented civilization going on. Okay. And so these are the different contents of this Gosagan, the Book of Holy Words. And it's not easy reading. Some of it is very easy, but some of it's tough because it has definitely a cultural, a Japanese influence. And I'll never forget, I spent a summer in Japan observing their teaching techniques. And here in the United States, we see only the good points, right? But in this book, sometimes there's things that will seem negative to Westerners. For example, when I read it the first time, I went to one of the teachers and I said, what does it mean in this book where God says, if you don't do this or that, he will beat you to a pulp? I said, the God I serve doesn't beat people to a pulp. What are we talking about? Is this a mistranslation? And I was told, oh, you're a mother of a teenager. When your daughter starts to misbehave or something, do you ever, in a joking way, threaten her and say, if you don't get that bed made, I'm going to beat you to a pulp? And I said, well, yeah. And they said, well, this is like humorous to people who understand the language. So there are some places in it that may be difficult to understand, but on the other hand, it's an amazing book and gives lots and lots of revelations, only revelations about what's going on, what's happening in the world right now. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about some of our basic beliefs and practices. So one of our main tenets is the origin of the world is one and only one. I showed you that with the truth, the summit of divine truth on Mount Fuji. The origin of all humankind is one and only one. The origin of all teachings is one and only one. The origin of all religions is one and only one. And we need to return to the origin, in other words, to awaken and to close the gap, all of us, regardless of any faith we belong to close the gap between ourselves and God by practicing the art of true light. So we call this origin Su. And Suno Kami-sama would be the way we say it in Japanese. But in English, here in the Western world, we say Su God, or the core or main God. And one of the first principles I want to talk about, in the introduction, it talked about the three-dimensional cross, but that's in our intermediate seminar, not in our primary seminar. So I put this in for the primary seminar. We have what we call the principle of the cross. So right here, I don't know how I missed this between the age of birth and 28 when I joined, but I had no idea that fire always burns vertical. I'm sure I had, turned a match sideways at some point. But anyway, our understanding is that the principle of the cross is the combining of opposite essences to produce something new. So we have the fire and the water, or we have the vertical and the horizontal, or positive and negative, or male and female, or God and humans, or parents and children. So opposites, when they're combined together, they produce something amazing. Okay. And this is one of our kind of a conglomerate of the principle of the cross, the unification of the opposites. Over here, now, can you see my cursor when I move it on the screen? Yeah, you see it? Okay, so this is the vertical and the horizontal. So this is vertical in Japanese, fire is ka, okay? Fire, spirit, spiritual. Mi is water. That's the material or the horizontal. And when you put ka, mi together, you get God, okay? Kami, okay? So one of the things I guess I need to explain here is that our perception of God is not in a human form. When the Bible says, for us, when the Bible says he created humans in his image, we think of it more as an artist who decides to do a painting or a pottery or something, and they sketch an image. Okay? So it's his image. It's not some other deity's image, but it doesn't mean he has human form or that he has gender. We use the personal pronoun of he because it could be he, she, it, whatever. So for us, God is divine emotion, which equals love, divine will, and divine, I can't think of it, love, wisdom, and will, and divine wisdom. And those three are changed into light. Okay. So when we talk about God, the origin, we're talking about an amazing compressed wisdom, love, and will that manifests as light. On the left, the spiral here, starting from the bottom. This is essentially the divine plan you looked at earlier, but it's in 3 dimensions. So we have this red period, which was a spirit first period. It was a theocratic age. In the Bible, which again, I grew up in Methodist church, so it's simple to talk about those terms for me. So in the Bible, this would be the Garden of Eden. This is an age where God and humans were so close together they could communicate easily with one another, and they helped one another. Adam names the animals in the garden, right? They're working together, hand in hand, side by side. In our understanding, after that, God's plan moved to a material first age. It was God's plan. He had created everything so that humans could grow and learn and become godlike. So in the material centered age, we received of subsoul. So we have the main soul, which most of you know is the third eye, right? Or the area of the pineal gland, but we received the subsoul, which if you're looking at chakras would be the chakra that's right below the navel, okay? So this subsoul gives us the power to live on earth. It's the power of desire. It's the power, the desire for sex, the desire for dominance, the desire to make progress. It's what, in a very simplistic form, I would call ego, okay? But that ego, the righteous ego, allows us to move forward. And then you'll see the divine plan again, the other version of it. But we're in a period in here, which is a great transition next to the next theocratic age, which our understanding is the goal of God's plan, to establish a civilization of harmony based upon love. Again, from my biblical background, you go through the tribulations, and then you establish a 5,000-year period of world peace. So, but using the principle of the cross, in the theocratic ages, the fire energy, the vertical energy, God is in the ascendant vertical position. And in this case, the children or the water energy are in the horizontal supportive position. During the age of the break religions, our understanding is God sent many holy souls. He sent Buddha. He sent Moses. He sent Jesus. He sent many holy souls to bring his teachings so that we wouldn't forget about God. We wouldn't become so desirous of physical things that we would totally forget. In this transitional age, the baptism by fire that we're in now, the red, the vertical is now moving into the ascendant position again, and the horizontal is moving back into a supportive position. So as this happens, at some point they become united, but they're on a diagonal. So we know there was a horrific symbol that was used in Germany of a diagonal swastika, right? The swastika itself is not bad. This is basically a swastika. It rotates, okay? The cross has the appropriate axes for a swastika. The problem is that when it's in the diagonal position, which is the way Nazi Germany had it, it's an age of chaos. It's an age of violence. Okay. So again, here's the yin and the yang, and I'm going to move past that one because I'm running out of time. So when the two things unite together, we have a new something comes out. Okay. So I was a weaver. You have to put the warp on the loom. I'm sorry. Yeah, you have to put the warp on the loom and the weft, right? My daughter's about to build a house on our property, we hope. She's going to have posts vertical and beams horizontal. When we want to create a family, we need parents, which are the vertical, and children. Okay. So here's the divine plan again. So this is the 7 generations of creation. Here is the reign of the moon lineage or the water lineage deities. And it was during this period right here, if you could see this larger, I don't think you can see it enough. This is where the holy souls I was talking about came to earth to bring the teachings. This one right here, the change in the divine will. Our founder received a revelation on January the 1st, 1962. So remember the 60s, the hippies, the era of love. Okay, if you remember them, you're my age. Okay, so January 1, 1962, the founder received a revelation that we were going to be entering a new transitional period. And in our organization, it's called the peak or the period of the baptism by fire and spirit. And during that, we will be going through various types of phenomena of judgment and also natural convulsions. And by passing through this, we will be able to move towards, we'll have some people who make it through, right? They're seed people. They'll be able to work together with holy souls, saints who are waiting in the heavenly world to help build this new civilization, the second returning of Christ, right? So Buddha has predictions that a someone will come 5,000 years in the future or something like that. Okay, so this is the period we're in now, and that's what's happening. And in the revelations God gave to our founder, which started in 1959, okay, he was told, give the art of true light to all humankind so they can become purified and pass through this by erasing their spiritual impurities and awakening. If you become purified enough, you will naturally be moved to a safe place. Okay, so here's another principle. This is a principle of circulation. So our understanding is we have a cycle of birth, growth, maturity, withering, death, and rebirth. Sorry, that was a Halloween skeleton there. I didn't realize it. I didn't know it was moving, okay? So in my case, having grown up in Christianity, to believe in reincarnation was very hard. It took me many years before I believed in it. I read books. I found out that the vast majority of people in the world do in fact believe in it. But more importantly were those esoteric experiences by giving light. Sometimes there would be a spirit that would manifest and would explain about reincarnation, or would explain why this spirit was attached to this person and how much they hated them. So those are things you learn through the art of true light. But most of us understand the principle of circulation in nature. One of the aspects of Sukyo Mahikari, we're registered as a religion, but we actually do lots of things. We have a system of farming called Yoko Farming that people do, where we combine God, nature, and humans and the art of true light. We have a medical professionals group worldwide that have conferences and are working on how to make what they call cross medical science. We have teachers that are opening sunlight schools where children can get a spiritual background along with the 3 R's? Okay, so principle of circulation. This is here, this red, yellow, and blue line. This is the principle of reincarnation and transmigration. So the blue line represents the astral body. The red line represents the spiritual body. The yellow line represents the physical body, the time we live on earth. And as we go through multiple lifetimes here, at some point, if we attain enough spiritual elevation, the astral drops off and we become a very pure and saint-like soul who can be used by God. Okay. So same way, principle of, again, I can't read it. Don't know how to make those things go away. Okay, we're just gonna skip that one. Let me go back. Sorry. Okay, so essentially we have the principle of unification and separation. So we fall in love. Number 2, we get married, we produce a child, and from the moment of birth, the child starts separating. When they get to be a teenager, they're pretty separate. When they get to be in college, they're much more separate, right? And then they fall in love, and they get married, and they have a baby, and now we have expansion. So our family went from being 3 people to now we have 5 or more, okay? So this principle of circulation, we all understand the law of gravity. I can't say, oh, because I'm a Sukyo Mahikari member, if I cut the limb off of the tree, it doesn't fall to the earth. No, it falls to the earth. There's a law of gravity, right? So these are spiritual laws. And it doesn't matter whether we're Christian or we're Islam or we're Buddhist or we're Hindu, these spiritual laws function, right? So when we learn them, which is what we teach in the 3-day course, is the spiritual laws or the universal principles for daily life, and we start to practice them, our life becomes much more smooth. So here you have this same expanded spiral, and our understanding is that above and beyond the spiritual world is the origin. We're calling Su. And at the time of creation, Su manifested through this yellow line and created in this 7th dimension we call the 4 pillar deities: fire, water, time, and space. And by using fire, water, time, and space, Su manifests into the 6th dimension, okay? And in the 6th dimension, Su creates deities that can help in the creation. In Christianity, we might call cherubims and seraphims and angels, okay? And then it continues. In this 5th dimension, souls who are not human, they're divine souls, but they're able to descend into the human world. So Jesus, Buddha, Moses, holy souls are in this dimension. The 4th dimension is what we call the astral world, the place of training after death. The 3rd dimension is where we live. And I'm not going to go through it again. Here's another principle. This one is probably one of the most important of our principles, and yet the most misunderstood, even by people like me who've practiced for 40 years. Okay, so we need to keep studying it. The principle of cleansing in nature is fairly easy to understand. We seem to be going through the one in the center right now. Texas is like really struggling, okay? They've been without power for many hours. So this principle of cleansing in human beings, again, when we have actions or words or even thoughts which are not in harmony with the divine will, we accumulate what we call spiritual impurities. So for example, we have what we call the 5 great sins. Well, I'm just talking about one of those. The sin of killing living things. I think that's probably common in any faith. We shouldn't kill living things. So some of my friends say, oh, I never kill anything, right? Okay, good for you. Do you drive a car? Have you ever checked your headlights after driving your car at night? I think you killed some living things. Okay, this is what we call earthly karma or earthly impurities. It's not like killing another human being. And I come from a long line of Kansas hunters, and I don't know exactly where hunting fits in, but I don't hunt. Okay. So anyway, this principle of cleansing, just by living in the physical world, we accumulate spiritual impurities, and we use the art of true light to erase those so that we can awaken more quickly to God. So the principle of cleansing in humans, if it's manifesting in our physical body, it manifests as fever, pain, and discharge. Okay. So most of us hate fever, pain, and discharge. We find it to be terribly inconvenient. No, no, no. I have a Zoom meeting I have to be at today. I can't have a runny nose. I'd better go take an antihistamine to stop it. Right? Or I'm a school teacher. I've got to be in class today. I can't have a fever. I better take an aspirin. So medical science today has come up with a solution that covers the symptoms. And we're not opposed to medical science, but we think there needs to be a higher level medical science that puts the design of the human body first. We're not saying to people, don't use medicine, don't have surgeries, things like that. We're saying to people, understand what you're doing when you do it and try to figure out ways that you can avoid it as much as possible. So these are natural things. And you've probably noticed with little children, even they have a fever or pain, they're up running around really soon. But as we get older, we get knocked for a loop with those things. And we're seeing it in the pandemic. The older people are the ones that are getting hit the hardest. But there's other kinds of cleansing phenomena. Conflicts in marriage or otherwise, debt and financial problems, bullying, rejection, isolation. These are all mental and emotional cleansings. Okay. Our teaching is there is no disease, there is only cleansing. But all of these things I've listed are what we call passive purification. So the active purification is to give light and to offer service. And by doing those things, your impurities can be erased. And the only requirement to be able to give light is you have to be 10 years old. Okay? You can receive light even before you're born, but you have to be 10 years old to join and learn to give light. So when we give light, we give to the spiritual aspect, the upstream. We check your body. Well, we start with 10 minutes on the forehead. So we give to the spiritual aspect for 10 minutes. We're projecting God's light into the main soul. And as the spiritual aspect gets purified, the mind starts to become calm. The body starts to become refreshed, and our material aspect starts to improve. But we also find lumps in a person's body or wherever they tell us it hurts. And because there's a spiritual, an astral, and a physical cell in every cell, we still focus on giving to the spiritual. We think the body was arranged in the perfect form. God created it perfectly, right? We are messing it up, but God created it perfectly. So the spiritual aspect should have enough energy to cleanse whatever we get into mentally or physically. But because our minds are so far away from God, our actions are so far away from God, sometimes the spiritual aspect becomes cloudy. So again, we do the two practices, the art of true light and the practice of the universal principles. And in Japan, this is a very good illustration for Japan because mostly you don't drive over there. You take the train or you take the subway, right? So if you're a foreigner like me, I can remember waiting a long time on the train to Nagoya, and two things happened. One is they pronounced it Nagoya, and the other is I was on the opposite platform. So the trains were going the opposite direction. Okay. So essentially, we humankind have taken the wrong train from the wrong platform. We thought we were headed towards happiness and heaven, but we are ending up, if we go all the way to the line, we're going to end up creating a hell-like world. So we need to switch platforms and go the other direction. This is our founder and our second spiritual leader, and our present spiritual leader on the right. And he goes on to explain here, I'm not going to read it because I'm out of time. Okay. He goes on to explain here that he was asked by God to bring this light to everyone and to reveal the spiritual laws that will govern and unite people. Okay. So as we become more purified, we want to become a person of true prayer. When we think of prayer in Christianity, we think of bowing before God and offering, hopefully, first some honor or glory before we give our requests. Many of us think of our prayers as mainly our requests. But our understanding is true prayer is not just kneeling or bowing and praying, it's how you live your life. And it's living in such a way that you can fulfill God's prayer. So when I first joined, I didn't realize God had a prayer. And when I discovered God has a prayer, which is to achieve God's plan, which is a heavenly civilization on earth, it started to make sense to me. Now, I knew about the heavenly civilization to come, but I think I didn't understand my responsibility in it. So when we advance on the path of the divine principles by practicing true light, we work to create heaven on earth. And in this age of theocracy, our understanding is there may be some religions that may say, no, you can't practice this. From our perspective, everyone is invited to practice. And it's not leave your religion and practice this. It's bring the true light into your own faith and start seeing the miracles that the founder of your faith created happening again. We believe Jesus gave true light. Okay. We believe Buddha gave true light. I skipped one. This is again from the Book of Holy Words. The teaching of how to perceive God. There are innumerable ways to perceive God. I'm going to look at it in the book because I can't see it all the way here. I'm looking, I'm getting it. My husband is here on the side coaching me.
If you put your screen in a grid at the upper right of your screen, you'll see a flat line, a larger flat line, two squares. If you put it at the far right where you'll see 9 squares, 3 by 3.
Oh, but I have a share screen.
It.
Anyway, yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's very helpful, but somehow it's not the same as when I don't have this shared screen up. There are innumerable ways to perceive God. There are some people who do not know God. Some boldly refuse to know God. Some come to know God and become awed and humble themselves with respect. Some fear God. Some love God. Some make use of God without feeling ashamed at all. Some, although they were taught by God, even express themselves as if they had known all along, etc., etc. Which attitude are you going to choose? This is one of the freedoms given to human beings by God. It is up to you to attain whatever is spiritually in balance with you, according to the way you choose. Okay? But I shall reveal the following, and I'll stop there. Okay? So if you want to receive light, these are the locations where you can call and ask. You can say, I'd like to receive light. A session of light is 50 to 60 minutes. As I said, it's free. Right now, the pandemic has many of our centers closed. But if you call and say, I heard about Sukyo Mahikari, I want to receive light, they'll help you figure out how to do it. The number there under Kansas is my home phone number if you have questions about anything, right here. Okay. And I'll go ahead and flip that one. So in order to really understand Sukyo Mahikari, the first thing is receive true light often. if you can. I don't know how far Oxford is from Cincinnati.
It's not very far.
Not
About
very far.
40 minutes or so.
Okay. So there's a center in Cincinnati, good friends of ours. The woman, there's a mandatory retirement age for staff of 77. So she's no longer the head of the center, but for about 30 years she was. And she was a nun for about 15 years before that. And I asked her once, why did you leave the Catholic Church if you were a nun? And she said, God told me to. And I said, why did you join? And I said, why did you become a nun? And she said, God told me to. So anyway, she's a lovely woman, Marianne. Okay, so if you experience the True Light often and you like it, you can apply for and attend the primary course. They're held at our centers, maybe 2 or 3 times a year at the smaller centers. They're a 3-day weekend, almost always a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There is an offering for that, so they can explain that to you. After completing the course, you start radiating true light to anyone, anywhere, and anytime, and you accumulate your esoteric experiences. Okay? Question and answers. I thought I'd never get there. If you have questions, I'd love to entertain them.
Thanks so much, Susan. If you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask directly, or you can type it in the chat. I didn't see any in the chat yet, just I think a few comments. You can probably stop your share screen too, Susan, if you want to.
Okay, I can actually do that.
So you can see people.
There you go, that'll work. Now if I can get it off of my... Okay. I don't want to do that. I think I've got it. There we go. Nice to see you all. Okay, Sonia was here. She says, as a Sukyo Mahikari member, I think our practice is kinder and more gentle, or something like that in the chat. And who put the chat in Japan? They have the saying that the nail that stands out shall be pounded down. Is this from Morgan? M. Morgan?
Yes, sorry, I'm in the dark over here.
Okay. How do you know that? Have you been to Japan?
My best friend is from Jamaica, but
Okay.
I've had a friend for about 50 years now, 40 years. Oh, 30 years. 30 years who is in Japan, and we kept up a regular email correspondence. And I just, I like a lot of different cultures. And I like the idea of kami, and I like the idea of spirituality in every living thing, even things that aren't alive but are part of nature, like a rock. And I've always sensed that. And it's an island. It was completely isolated until Perry, so it really developed its own culture without being messed with. And that's a very strong influence. And they're very considerate of other people. You always consider the other person, which is why you cover your mouth when you laugh, because you're in a crowded situation. People may not want to smell your breath, which they will in a crowded situation. You just always consider the other person. And there's a lot of following this, of being the same. Otherwise, it's chaotic. So the nail that stands out will be hammered down. But I thought you might want to speak to, I don't know what it is in Japanese. It's very popular, and it's becoming popular here, the forest healing, where people walk barefoot through nature, and their doctors actually prescribe this. They walk barefoot through a forest in nature to absorb the healing chemicals released by the trees, and the healing, and science is behind this 100%, the healing microbes that are found in all of this world in the soil that actually helps to prevent depression. But it's a
Okay.
very common practice in Japan.
Yes. Let me say a couple of things from what you said. First of all, I think you're exactly right. And I've been the nail standing up and have been allowed to be smashed with the hammer several times. And I just keep popping back up. So, and just keep practicing harder and you become stronger and it's great. And it's not like you're being chastised forever. It's like you're being taught how to serve in a better way. The second thing I'd like to say is our founder said, worldwide, there's such a conflict among religions about monotheistic, polytheistic, and pantheistic. And his understanding is they are all true. There is only one true God, the origin of all things, who we call Su. You might have other names, but the original God, the I am, okay? And that's monotheism. And the original God created other deities. You might call them cherubims, seraphims, angels. Principal deities is what we call them, principal deities and sub-deities. And that's polytheism. And there is the God essence within everything. Rocks, trees, earth, animals, everything. We are the highest of God's treasures. We are the children of God. But that's pantheism. Now, I've read a little bit about the practice of forest walking. I can tell you more about Yoko Farming because that's what we try to do on our property, but it's more like Yoko gardening. And it's a combination of organic and verbalizing to the soil and to the plants and giving light. So Yoko Farming, when I first went to Japan for a 2-week training on what is Yoko Farming, one of the things that shocked me to no end was they didn't go forest walking in the forest, but they rolled in the compost, right? And they rubbed it on their face and said that it would make their skin lovely, and it did. But it might be because of those microbes you're talking about. The closest thing I've done to forest walking was in Higashiyama, which is a suburb of Kyoto. And I went to a temple there. It has a golden dragon painted on the ceiling. And there's a wonderful art story about that dragon, about how it came to life after the artist meditated long enough before painting it. But anyway, and so I got to go there and see that. But I also got to walk through the bamboo forests, and it is lovely. It's amazing the peace you feel when you walk through the tall, tall bamboo. So I know forest walking is becoming very popular. So
there's actually a lot of hard Western science behind the kind of chemicals released by the trees you're breathing in and the microbes in the soil that barefoot children, barefoot gardeners, all these people experience. We're part of this earth. We're not separate from it.
Absolutely.
And it has things that heal us and help us emotionally, physically, in every way. It's not to say there's not a place for advanced Western medicine. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that, like not at all. But I'm just saying there's a lot in this world, that we don't know, that we can never know, that we just have to go with.
My husband and I were taking a trip to Japan last fall, and United States people cannot enter Japan right now. So we have our tickets on hold until 12/31 of this year. So we're hoping by the end of the year, we'll be able to go to Japan. And at that time, we had several of our friends who were going to join us. So if you'd like to go to Japan with us this coming fall, let us know. We will be going to one of our main world shrine for a ceremony. And after that, we will go to Hiroshima. We'll go to Kyoto and maybe a little bit of time in Shinjuku or somewhere, not Shinjuku.
I wouldn't be able to financially or physically, but that's a very generous offer. Thank you.
Yeah, I wish I could pay for you, but I can't.
It looks like Marvin has his hand up.
Okay.
Do you have a question, Marvin? You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Hi, Susan. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm a hospice chaplain. And I'm always looking or searching for interfaith resources like prayers, books, resources that I can use. Do you have any specific resources that maybe I can get to assist and help me with that? Any?
Now you would be using them for Sukyo Mahikari members or for others, or?
Yeah, just in general, just, interfaith prayers, things like of that nature.
Let me, we had a center in our home until the 5th of February, so about a week ago. And my husband was a staff member, a doshi, essentially a reverend, but he reached 77. So they ended up closing the center in our home, and we belong to the Chicago Center now. So let me talk to the head of the Chicago Center. How can I connect with you? Can I give you my email address and you email me? And okay, yes. So it's all lowercase. It's Sue, S-U, and then my last name, Nakao, and the number 2000.
Thank you. Got it.
At gmail.com. Okay. That's a great question, and we want to help in any way we can. So we're very interested in creating cross medical science. I had a miracle that I discovered. Well, the miracle appeared sometime between the 3rd week of January 2020 and the 3rd week of January 2021. I had been having some bleeding from the uterus for about 7 years, which didn't really concern me because I just felt it was cleansing, but it concerned my doctor a lot. So finally he said, you have to go for a checkup. So I went to a gynecologist. I had the checkup. I had my first PAP in 35 years. Everything in the PAP came out fine, but she was concerned and had me do another procedure. I did the other procedure. 3 days later, they called me and said, you have cancer of the uterus. You need a full hysterectomy, a total hysterectomy. I was totally shocked because I hadn't even taken aspirin. I hadn't taken anything for 40 years except when I had my gallbladder out. So I was really surprised. I went to see the oncologist, but before I did, I checked the lab reports and I looked up everything on the internet so I could understand what it said. And the lab report did not say I had cancer. The lab report said I had precancerous cells and that they could not rule out an endometrial cancer. So after a long standing nail talk with the oncologist, I kept saying to her, she kept saying, you need to have a hysterectomy because you've already had your kids and you have precancerous cells and you need to have everything removed. And we have this wonderful robot we have to pay for. She didn't say that. I'm sorry. Robotic surgery. But so I asked her, I said, I'm not going to remove all my organs if you can't prove to me that I have cancer, right? And I said, isn't there some other test? And she said, well, you might be able to do a CAT scan or a sonogram, but it probably wouldn't show up and then you wouldn't believe us. And I said, that's true. If it didn't show up, I wouldn't believe you. So I told her I'd go away and think about it. And I went back, and a couple of months later, I saw my general practitioner again. He's Japanese. And he said, have you made a plan? What are you going to do? And I said, actually, I do have a plan, but I need your help with it. And he said, what's your plan? And I said, I'm going to wait a year. He knows that we do the art of true light. I said, I'm going to wait a year. I'm going to give light to have my husband give light to the back and front of my uterus every day as my extra points. And at the end of a year, I need you to request a CAT scan for me. So he did. And the CAT scan came back perfectly normal, but I'm old, they said. My organs are old. But anyway, I was so happy and so thankful that I did not have it taken out. And one of the things I'd said to the oncologist was, you know what? I understand scientifically you're the expert, and I'm not challenging you as the scientific expert. But I also understand there is a spiritual aspect. In my case, the aspect is because of reincarnation, you really need to think seriously about what you remove from your body. Not always, but once in a while, it can leave a scar on the spiritual body so that when you're reborn, you may not be able to have children. We don't know that, right? But you have to think and you have to pray and you have to think about it. So I had a wonderful experience, and my doctor, who's also very scientific, is like, well, if you start bleeding again or you have pain or da-da-da-da-da-da, get back with me. And I said, I absolutely will. And he said, do you have any other follow-up? And I said, yeah, maybe a couple of years from now, I'll have another CT, another CAT scan just to see. So this is a very, if I do have this cancer, if I did have this cancer, it's very slow growing. I don't think it's fair. I think it was
There's just a lot we don't know about this world. There's a lot we don't know. I shouldn't be alive. I had less than a 3% chance of being alive. No one can tell me why I had what happened to me happen or why I'm alive. I had 6 brain operations, a grade 5 subarachnoid hemorrhage. My only donor kidney was failing. I had full-on pneumonia, and I was in a coma for over a month. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I should not have lived. There is no reason why I should have lived. But people were praying for me, from Wiccans on the West Coast to Methodists on the East Coast, and all up and down and in between, every kind. And I can't discount that that has to do something with why I'm still here. I shouldn't be here. I've had that kind of instance happen twice. There are no answers. I'm grateful for Western medicine, but I don't think the more I know I don't know.
That's correct. And that's why we need to receive light, and so we can know more. We can become closer to God, and then we have just natural understanding. But you're right. There's so much we don't know. And it's because of the divine plan. We've been in a material-centered, material-first age, and now we're moving to a God-centered, God-first age, right? So it's like if I went to school and I only took classes in German, or I have a friend who went to school her first 14 years in Japan, and she moved to the United States. She's a lovely young woman. She's very intelligent, but she really struggled when she got to the United States in school, not just because of the English, but because of the concepts are still, you know, the way of thinking is so different. I've been married to my husband 34 years, and I still cannot anticipate how he's thinking. It's kind of the East and the West right here in our home. I never know if it's male and female or if it's East and West, but I think we get the benefits of both. So,
Susan, there's a few more questions in the chat.
okay.
The first one says, this has been such a beautiful introduction to a faith I hadn't known about before. Are there any formal worship services or a liturgy? Do you come together regularly in spiritual practice?
Very good question. Thank you. Whose question is it?
Jen, looks like.
Okay, Jen. We have in every center or in every home, we have a sacred object that we enshrine in centers or the home. It is a scroll with Japanese characters written on it, and it has the name of God written on it. So in our home here, it's called Goshintai, okay? Tai meaning body, and Shin meaning God, and Go being honorific. So we have the name of God written, and it's very frustrating for people who come to help us with our house, like roofers who want to make an estimate, because we take it down once a month to clean the altar and the holy object, and we don't let anybody go above it. So you can't go on the roof at our house unless you come on the right day, okay? So, but we have we clean it right before the once a month ceremony. And we have what we call a Thanksgiving ceremony once a month. And at that ceremony, we encourage members or guests, whoever, to assemble, and we offer prayers. The ceremony lasts maybe 30 minutes. And then we get the divine teaching from our present spiritual leader. At our world shrine, they have a beginning of the month Thanksgiving ceremony, and he gives a teaching there in Japan, and then it's distributed to all the centers and all the families who have these ceremonies to read to whoever comes. So that's our main spiritual worship. Then most centers are open. The larger the center, the more they're open, right? We're open one day a week, and by appointment anytime you want to come, as long as we're here. Did that answer your question? I said by appointment. Yeah, that's my husband in the background. Here he is, the Japanese guy over there. Okay. So.
Looks like there's another question from Paul. Do you have to give up your religion to practice giving light?
Okay, I was trying to answer that back in the chat. No, absolutely not. Right? You do not have to give up your religion to practice giving light. In fact, the founders, the idea of Sukyo is to bring the light back in to the religions. Our understanding, if you look at the miracles Jesus created, right? Jesus healed people. He also changed water into wine. He also did many, many miracles, right? Those are the esoteric part that I was talking about in the beginning. And but Jesus is different than a normal person, okay? Jesus is a holy soul sent to earth for the purpose of helping people continue to focus on the Father God or Su God, right? But we have people who are ministers who practice this. We have people who are regular members of different churches. In Korea, there is a Buddhist priest who, I think he's been practicing now for about 6 or 7 years, and he's actually also enshrined this Goshintai, this sacred name of God, in his temple, and he gives light, but he also does the Buddhist practices. Okay, and we had a Jewish rabbi. He passed away recently. I had known him for many, many years. For a little while, we had a Native American medicine man, but I can't remember which tribe. So people of all different faiths can practice this, Paul. I hope you'll join. Or at least experiment.
Thank you. So I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. We're about 10 after 9 now if you're on the East Coast, and 8 o'clock if you're in Central Time. So does anyone have any final questions or comments that they would like to express before we wrap up?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You guys made it easy. Thank you for having questions.
Yeah,
Great job, Susan.
Marilyn, are you from Ohio? Yeah. And Jessica, are you from Oxford area?
That's actually Becky. I don't know why her name says Jessica.
I'm from Cincinnati.
You're from Cincinnati?
Yes.
Oh, you need to meet my friend and receive light. She's lovely.
That
If
would
you're
be interesting.
If you're interested, shoot me an email.
The first time I heard about your faith was I lived in the Chicago area in near Streamwood.
And Streamwood is where our center is located.
And we passed this sign on the road that was Sukyo Mahikari, and we're going,
Highway 59.
Is that? And nobody knew anything about it. But
that location, actually, my husband and I, after we got married in 1986, 2 years later, he said, resign your tenure at the university and come serve with me. And a couple of years later, we had found that location for the center in Chicago. So we served up there about 7 years. Took care of that one, the Cincinnati one, and the Detroit one. So.
Yeah, I'm from here. I lived in the Chicago suburbs for about 40 years. And then 9 years ago, I came back home.
Okay. Well, Marianne, my friend, I can't think what her address is, but she's she taught at the Montessori school there for quite a while until she retired, and then she became the head of the Cincinnati Center. So, well, thank you all. Thank you, Geneva, for letting us be on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Susan. It was
Yes,
wonderful
thank you.
presentation. And thank you all for joining us.
And we'll join you again.
Yeah, I hope you'll continue. We have another faith sharing next Tuesday on Quakerism. So please come back. Same time, same Zoom link.
I have a long line of Quakers in my ancestry. So.
Oh, good. Well, I hope you'll join us.
We'll try. Tuesday nights. See, Tuesday is our day that we're open, but right now during COVID, nobody's coming, or very few people are coming. So I'll try. Okay.
Great.
Thank you. Good to see you, Katya. Good to see you, Sonia.
Bye,
And
everyone.
others who know me.
Bye. Thank you.
This
Have a great
life is
night.
the best. Thank you.